Hello supporters of light, I'm Gabriele Chiapparini, welcome to Small Photobook Cult. If you like our videos, please support this podcast with a small donation. It's just the monthly cost of 2 coffees, or 1 coffee if gentrification already spread in your city. It's super important for us, and in case you do it, thank you so much. This is my cat. I asked Gemini to write the introduction to Book of Veles by Jonas Bendiksen, and you will find out during the episode why. So, Gemini said, "The Book of Veles is a masterpiece of modern deception, a ghost stories for the digital age. On the surface, it is a gritty photojournalistic account of Veles, North Macedonia, a notorious hub for international fake news factories. But look closer. The grainy shadow and the weary faces aren't real. They are synthetic." Jonas Bendiksen didn't just document this information, he committed it. By populating real landscape with the 3D avatars and generating the text through AI, he held up a mirror to our own gullibility. It is an haunting reminder that in the 21st century, seeing is no longer believing. Welcome to the episode 65 of Small Photobook Cult. We are here with Jonas Bendiksen. Hello Jonas, I'm really happy to have you here.
Great, yeah, great to connect.
Yes, we are going to speak about this a bit crazy book and project that is really fascinating to me. But we can start a bit introducing yourself. So tell us a bit about yourself. How did you end up becoming a photographer?
Yes, I'm Jonas. I'm 48 years old now. That means that I've been hacking away at this photography stuff for almost 30 years, to my great shock. I remember still, there was like a time when everyone was calling me like the young photographer, I got some young photographer award and stuff like that. But nobody says that anymore.
Why?
Actually, it's a very long time since they said that. But I've been doing this basically my entire adult life. I left high school when I was 18 or finished high school in Norway. And then I already had sort of fallen in love with photography through chance, really. I found my dad had this dusted down SLR camera lying in the cupboard, which I discovered one day when I was probably like 14, 15 years old. Started playing with it, turning the dials, and got a book from the library, how to use a camera and stuff like that. And I started playing with it and got really enamored with it quite quickly. Then I wanted to try developing pictures myself. So me and my dad built a small darkroom in the family bathroom, to the frustration of the rest of the family. Stinking the whole place up with chemicals and sitting in there for hours. But it really was the magic of that process that grabbed me then as a 15-year-old. The sort of alchemy of it all, the magic of waiting for the image and seeing what you had caught and it coming magically to life in that dark red room. It was really magical, the whole thing, and that got me sort of hooked. And I started photographing more and more, and friends and family. And then I went to the library again and found whatever photography books and magazines they had there, and started discovering kind of documentary photography was the thing that spoke to me. So photography from the real world out there. A lot of the sort of the classic greats, the Joseph Koudelkas and Cartier-Bresson and Salgado and these characters. Them and that made me sort of just fall in love with it and wanting to see, is this possible to do myself? So when I was finished with school, I wanted to give it a go. I found a very a sort of short introductory course to the sort of mechanics of photography in Bristol in England. I went to that, and after a year, I got an internship at the Magnum office in Magnum Photos office in London, working in the library, answering the phone, running to the post office, and making cups of tea. Kind of became my education in photography that year, Magnum, really. So seeing how documentary photographers, photojournalists, how they worked, what were the issues, business. I sort of learned by osmosis a lot. And then after that year, I started freelancing. So I've been working as a freelance photographer since I was 19, so close to 30 years.
How and why this project came about? What pushed you to create these images?
All my projects start with sort of a fascination for something or a question I have, or the Book of Veles, it started it was in 2016, connected to the first Trump election, when he first became president. After he became president, I was kind of like many people, quite confused, quite worried, kind of angry, like what had happened. And I was reading all I could about the mechanics of how he won that election, all the social media intrigues, all the sort of Russian interventions, the sort of, Cambridge Analytica scandals and all of this. And this was also the sort of same time, for the first time we heard even the word fake news. It was around that time that was introduced to the general vocabulary. This was also the first time that we started seeing the first prototypes of computer-generated imagery, like, AI generated portraits and the very, very first examples of that. Anyways, when I was reading about the Trump election of 2016, trying to make sense of it, I came across this story about what had in the town of Veles in North Macedonia, where for a short time, right at the end of the 2016 presidential campaign, they became a sort of epicenter of fake news production. And this wasn't your typical story of somebody trying to manipulate the news for political purposes, but it was really a bunch of kids in a town where there was a lot of youth unemployment, economically challenging situation, who found a brilliant way to make money. Okay, and they did that by creating hundreds of websites that all pretended to be American news portals with lots of news about the election. They did that because they figured that if they cut and pasted whatever they could find of conspiracy theories, saucy clickbait, and sort of just entertaining, kind of pseudo news and online content, and put it on a website that looked like news websites and put lots of banner advertising on them, they could make money because people in America were hungry for this kind of mixture of clickbait and conspiracy and entertainment. And they basically got it right. They became very successful. They ran hundreds of these websites, all pretending to be American news portals. And after Trump got into office and people started looking into all the mechanics of the social media world and how this happened, the story of Veles, the youth of Veles, came up, and they became sort of famous for 15 minutes. All the world's news media went there to sort of portray them and this town as the fake news capital of the world. I found this endlessly fascinating. Okay, because these guys had kind of hacked the way we consume information, right? What they achieved, these young guys and hackers in Veles, it said something about the media world in which we live today, right? And at the same time, I'd gotten interested in this idea of, in addition to this idea of fake news, this kind of new concept, I got interested in this idea of computers generating images, photography-like images being made without cameras, but just generated through algorithms. And I started looking at where that technology was at this certain time. And I guess I was looking for a kind of vehicle to a sort of container of a story through which I could experiment and sort of probe a little bit how ready are we for a world where you can't really tell the difference between a classic piece of photojournalism and sort of computer game graphics created by the computer. And that's the genesis of the Book of Veles, because this is where I kind of used the tools available at that time for generating computer imagery to tell the story about these fake news producers in Veles and what had happened there, and to create this little test case, if you like, for preparedness for a world awash in computer-generated imagery.
And so we're watching a bit the book right now, and just to speak a bit about the design or the editing part, you decide to start with this really kind of documents, and then we go inside some landscape of the city. And I have to say that why this choice to have this part of the book so cold?
Well, I mean, the introduction there is why it's so cold. That's an interesting question. Well, in a way, I'm trying to play to the stereotypes. I mean, like in the Book of Veles, I'm actually trying not to go against the cliches, but I'm trying to use the cliches. I'm trying to play them up. So here, where it's about a town in Eastern Europe that's kind of accused of being kind of full of trickery and deceit and bad business. Yeah, and I'm trying to sort of use the stereotypes of a worn down Eastern European post-industrial sort of lifeless town, because there's so much photojournalism and documentary photography that sort of uses that. I mean, I've done it myself as well, like, in the post-Soviet world, these kind of dark, cold, post-communist urban landscapes. It's kind of a sexy thing photographically, and I'm kind of playing into that cliche, basically. I mean, the book, in the start, there's all these documents, there's all this historical material, and that's because the Book of Veles is a bunch of stories intertwined. I mean, there's the story about these fake news producers in Veles, but as I was researching this town and reading all about what had happened there, I came across the fact that Veles was also the name of one of the most important and powerful gods in the pre-Christian Slavic pantheon of gods. Okay, before Christianity in this part of the world, they had a pantheon of gods, and sort of the number 2 on the most powerful list was this guy called Veles. But he was the god of trickery and chaos and deceit and all these things. And I thought it was like, wow, it's such a amazing parallel that this kind of god of chaos has the same name as this town, now known for its distribution of in a way, chaos and fake news. And I was reading all about this god Veles, and then I came across the story about the Book of Veles, because the Book of Veles was originally this ancient manuscript found in 1919 by a Russian army officer, and it was an ancient manuscript that really was about these gods. It was from the 8th or 9th century. It was about these ancient gods and about the early formation of the kind of Rus Empire. And the Book of Veles is kind of a popular manuscript. It's seen as an interesting historical religious scripture that is studied and kind of read by many in that part of the world. The only thing is that all modern historians and linguists have long ago concluded that the Book of Veles was a forgery. It never existed. But it's still widely read today, and among certain groups at least. So I'm also introducing the story of the Book of Veles, this historical religious manuscript that, in a way, is only a piece of fake news from the 1920s when it was became known, but still today it lives its own life despite sort of science having debunked it a long time ago, and it's somehow fitting for the theme. So there's all these stories of the contemporary town of Veles, known for creating fake news. Then there's this god of mischief, the god Veles, and then the Book of Veles, this ancient manuscript that was actually a fake itself. So I'm interweaving all these stories. That's why you have the sections of historical material, which is facsimiles from an English translation of the Book of Veles made in the 70s, and my own images and quotes from headlines featured in these fake news websites. As you move through the book, you get at certain intervals, you get introduced back to all these different stories. So it's kind of a complex construction. The Book of Veles, you can see it just as a piece of, photojournalism, like images telling a simple story about these people who live in Veles, or you can go into the depths of all of these other mythological and historical levels.
Yeah, I'm writing down some other questions. Layer after layer. So I can imagine you are amazed by discovering that everything that you discover, it fits perfectly.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you feel, with some projects, sometimes you feel that you start and then the project overtakes you. It becomes a flow, and things just seem meant to be. And that's when I decided, wow, I gotta throw myself into this project. It's so fascinating, all these different elements. And I love these projects that have these multiple layers that you can keep peeling the onion. You see one thing and then you peel it a little bit, and you see something else. And for me, that's the recipe of a project that keeps me interested.
And also, you decide to put a kind of visual representation of the fake news in this start of the book. Like, to me, there are these blackbirds flying from that city of Veles, from there to United States, and anyway spreading all over the world. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but to me it's visually really powerful, because this blackbird is a huge presence in this first part of the book.
Yeah, like I said, it's really like, there's a lot of things in this book. There's a lot of strange elements. And some of them I expect nobody to ever find. There's a lot of small little cookies, surprises all over the place that I put in there because to me they meant a certain thing, or they make a reference to something. And it, I meant the book in that sense to be a little bit of a treasure hunt. You can go through them, and I'm always very happy when people see some of these small little details lurking in the pages, and that for me was part of the fun of the book.
And then after a kind of let's say setting of where the history took place, there is the title. Just after, I don't know, 20 pages probably, or something more. So it's a good intro for the book, for the project. How did the project evolve? Do you have an idea of what you wanted to do from the start?
Yeah, a lot of things with this project happened kind of like improvisation along the way, but the fundamentals of it, by necessity, were in place to right from the start. Of course, what you think you see when you open the book is not really what you're seeing, right? Because what I did to make the full disclosure right at the beginning, as a spoiler, it looks like a piece of photojournalism, this book, but it's not. What I did was I went to Veles twice on 2 short trips. And what I did in Veles, so I just photographed lots of empty, images of places devoid of people, empty offices, empty buildings, empty streets, empty landscapes, no people. I didn't photograph a single person. And then all the people and lots of other stuff, actually, I generated with these early version tools of computer-generated imagery. Software really at that time used mainly in video game production. Tools computer game industry would use to create the digital humans, for example, or animals for computer games, which at this point look extremely photorealistic. And I wanted to so I basically used these tools to create a kind of fake news of my own, a interpretation of what had actually happened in Veles. I mean, the story of these fake news produced in Veles is true. This happened there, but my depiction of it is entirely fictional, made by these people, computer game characters, really. And I was testing, can I, not having known anything about these programs at all, go on YouTube and spend a couple hours on YouTube tutorials and learn how to create these kind of characters, how to get the lighting right, etc. And then create images that kind of look like photojournalism. And that was the test to see whether anyone even noticed that these weren't really real images, but a sort of simulation. So in order to make this project, I had to know that, I had to have that idea in my head, because when I went there, I didn't even try to find these people who actually were involved in the fake news industry. We know they're there because lots of other media went there and interviewed them, etc., etc. But I made a specific point of not even trying to meet anyone from this scene, because I wanted my depiction of it to be based solely on my own prejudice and my own cliches and ideas in my head of what this actually looked like. So the backgrounds are from Veles, but everything happening, like this guy sitting on that couch, looking surly with his laptop, that's just something that was generated on my computer in my office. So I had to know that was what I wanted to do. But then there was a lot of elements in this project that developed underway as well.
And did you have the book form in mind from the beginning or not?
Yeah, for me, this was a very much a book project. The entire universe was aligning for this to be a book, right? I mean, from the discovery of the ancient manuscript called the Book of Veles, and all this ancient scripture, all of the, that spoke that it should be a book. Also, the Photobook is a place where you can really play and create your own vision 100%. And that, although there was an online component of this project that was important in the sense that I was sharing all this material later on my social media channels, etc. In a way, I also was bound by my own conscience. I, for example, because when the book came out in April 2021, the whole point was the book came out and I didn't say what this was. I intended it as a little test case for our, if we could really discern that these images were fake. So it was published as a classic piece of photojournalism. And the question I had in my mind is, how long will it take before anyone catches me red-handed? Before somebody starts screaming Jonas Bendiksen himself is a fake. I had a red line which I wouldn't cross, which was at that point I would absolutely not send this material to any newspapers or magazines or anything like that, because I didn't want to risk this being published in a trusted news source and then later on having to admit that these images were fake. I had to do it in this experiment in a kind of controlled manner, where I had control, and that I kind of could know more or less that the people who first saw it would later get the the update in a way that these were fake images and why I had decided to do this. I didn't know how long that would take. There's a lot of unknowns. Would it take 2 weeks before someone realized that these images were, crappy computer generated images? They're not that well made even, So I thought it would be only a matter of a couple of weeks, maximum a month. But I had no idea of knowing. But what I could know is that anyone buying a kind of photo book by Jonas Bendiksen, they probably, will get the message later on. They probably follow me on social media. They know me. They know Magnum. They will probably get the update. So it was a way I could kind of create a small scale controlled experiment without losing total control of where these images ended up.
Yeah, on those probably the book form it really fits the project, because at least you're going to give to the viewer the possibility to come back and to watch the images with really a lot of time, and it's also a way to push the people to discover the trick that maybe in an exhibition it's going to be more fast. In a photo book you can have the book at home and it's up to you to discover it or not.
Yeah, and the thing is, a photo book is a format that people in a way spend time with it. It's something that they actually look at it. That's sort of such a problem of our age. It's a problem of photography in general now, which I struggle a lot with. Which is people don't really look. We blast through this internal endless speed on all these devices. The images are flying. Images and video are flying past our eyes, and we stop for half a second. Once in a while, and throw in a heart symbol or a thumbs up and on to the next. We don't really look. So the photo book was a way to create something more permanent.
This is why this podcast exists with the PDF. So what was it like to visit a place, to photograph it not as it was in reality? And also, were you excited, scared? What emotion did you feel?
Yeah, it was a very strange process for me, very strange and very revealing. As opposed to if I was sent to Veles on some assignment from a magazine or something, and I had to spend a week or two trying to find the people involved, gain their trust, I get to spend time with them and document what was there. I was doing the exact opposite. I was wandering around this place, just imagining if somebody had sent me here on an assignment to photograph these people, what kind of images would I have liked to have taken, in my dream world? What would this dreamed up piece of photojournalism probably look like? So it was obviously a very different way to work than I'm used to. And it was challenging, but it was also kind of fun. It was very playful. It was kind of insane. It was, throughout, one thing was the actual photography part of it. It was very strange but enjoyable. But in the time afterward, I'm actually sitting there taking these images. I'm having a lot of doubts, of course, along the way. I'm getting very nervous about how this is, what I'm about to do at that time, which is put out a bunch of fake images. It's potentially a career destroying move, right? I'm putting my head on the chopping block. I have no idea how people will receive this, how people interpret my intentions. You can't really control that, especially on social media. People make up their minds about it, and whatever you say might not matter. I was very nervous. I was sleeping not well. I was having a big aching in my belly for a long, long time. I was not. There were parts of that process I was not having fun because I was worried about what this meant for me as a photographer, as a documentarian, etc. And with good reason. So it was a very emotional time for me. In terms of the situation, I also was very, very lucky because what I didn't know was that I went to Veles for the first time in February 2019 to sort of try if even this technically could be done, what I was intending to do. I discovered that, okay, I managed to make the software work. I can make these images, but I didn't have enough of these background tableaus. So I decided I have to go back to Veles. I went there for one more week in the end of February 2020. What I didn't know while I was walking around Veles is that this was going to be my last trip for a long, long time, because 10 days after I got home from that trip, kind of the entire world closed down because of COVID. Travel restrictions, that you could meet people, you can go, you have to socially distance from people. So I somehow miraculously ended up with the perfect COVID era photo project, because I was sitting at home. I had all the raw material I needed. All the pictures I was going to make did not involve meeting any people. I would just generate them on my computer instead. So I actually had months of work in 2020 there, where I could sit undisturbed in front of my computer with kind of a purpose, where a lot of people were frustrated at that time. Of course, for me, that was a very creative and productive time, just from the nature of the project. So I was very, very lucky.
And why did you need to go there? Couldn't you have produced everything with AI?
If you look at how kind of the concept of fake news in general works, or disinformation, or whatever term you use, the most successful variants of that is the ones that kind of go kind of close up towards the truth, but there are some nuances there that are off. But there is some connection to reality there. I mean, if you walk around and you say, green men from Mars are walking around the city and kidnapping old women, people probably won't believe it, right? Because it's kind of too far off. So because I wanted it to kind of be believable. So I wanted the backgrounds to be believable. Like this image we're looking at now. For me to create this entire universe from scratch, just imagine it. There's too many variables. And remember the technology at that time in 2020, 2019, 2020. I mean, it was, we only had a sort of warning, a premonition of what would come in terms of all, how easy it is to AI generate realistic images today. That didn't exist back then, right? So I was using prototype tools, very rudimentary tools in terms of image generation. I was using a lot of 3D modeling tools from the computer game business instead of real AI. So, so much has changed in these years since this book came out, right? The book is about, amazing power of generated images, but it was made at the very start of that wave, actually really before, it was really 6 months after kind of the truth of the Book of Veles came out, when OpenAI came with the first versions of ChatGPT, the first versions of DALL-E, Midjourney came, all of this. This book came out before those tools. So, I couldn't just, create a fake version of everything. It had to have a basis in truth. That's why I decided the backgrounds, the tableaus themselves would be from Veles, and then everything happening in that image in terms of humans and human interactions, and that would be the things I would add and manipulate.
And so you asked to the AI to have a kind of interpretation of your way to take pictures, and did you find that your AI picture show you something about yourself and your way of taking pictures that you didn't know?
I mean, it's a little bit different because, all of the text in the book, in my essay, there's a big essay in the front of the book explaining my journey through this. All of that is generated by the first publicly available prototype of what we now know as ChatGPT. It was called GPT-2. It was really cumbersome. It was not like an easy to use app like we have today. You had to connect through Python scripts to APIs to, lots of programming and stuff to actually make use of it. But that text is generated 100% by one of those first large language models, machine learning systems. So that's AI generated. The fake parts of the images are not actually AI generated. At that time I made the Book of Veles, there was no tools where you could sit like we do today and write sentence and say, and you could prompt them and say, make a version of a Jonas Bendiksen picture looking like a photojournalism image from Veles. Those things came much later, after the book had been out for a long time. So I was using, like I say, tools from the world of computer game industry, of 3D modeling, these kind of computer generation tools, image generation tools. So they weren't, this kind of magical black box where you tell an AI to emulate something. That it simply didn't exist. So I was building these images myself from scratch. So I was kind of the machine learning system, if you like, analyzing what are the ingredients of a typical Jonas Bendiksen picture. What cliches does this guy use? What visual traps does he fall into? What are the kind of building blocks of one of my pictures? And then I had to deconstruct that, and I would have to assemble it bit by bit using these kind of digital Lego tools. Which cheap tricks do I use to make my pictures? It also became a way to reflect on, photojournalism in general. What tricks do we need to use for it to look photojournalistic? If we have you take this image, if you have a story about Eastern Europe, which is, creating chaos and creating fake news and trying to trick everyone, what do we want that story to look like? On a general level, it should probably look kind of like these images, kind of dark and grainy, kind of colorless, lots of these kind of post communist era apartment blocks, the kind of decrepit plaster falling apart. It should be kind of suspicious, mafia looking guys who are trying to, deceive us. I was there should be bears walking all over town because they do that in Eastern Europe, I've heard, kind of these stupid cliches, and I'm trying to make it look like something I've seen before from this part of the world. I'm trying to make it look like something I could have done myself. And that's where I thought the sweet spot was of creating this confusion.
What is the idea behind the 3D bears like we see? One in the left picture here, to me it seems like a clue for the viewers.
Good question. If you look at the back of the book itself, the back cover, it's the imprint of a claw of a bear as well. The bears, I spoke about this god of trickery, whose name happened to be, by chance, Veles. And it turns out he was a shapeshifter. He was, he took many forms. He would go into the world and he would, shift forms into something else to go in disguise. And his main shapeshifting form was a bear. So the symbol of the god Veles is often a bear. You see in the illustration on the right, it's like a more an old illustration, but it's very typical. The god Veles is shown either as a bear or together with a bear, holding or walking together with a bear or something like that. So, and the actual kind of symbol of this god is also this claw, this bear. So, bear imprint. So, also because it is in this kind of falling apart I mean, Veles itself is actually not that much falling apart. It's just like I'm making it look like that. This kind of, again, cliches of Eastern Europe. There's bears all over the place, and then you have this bear god who is basically symbolizing all my trickery, right? Because he's the god of chaos, the god of trickery, and I'm performing a big trick here. So all around the book, you can see this bear god showing up. He's sneaking around behind the corners around the town. And there's different allusions to it in the text as well. I have encounters with some bears. I mean, it's all kind of weird and all over the top. It's quite stupid. But that is really why the bear motif, yeah.
So I asked to Gemini if Gemini can wrote a question for you. And Gemini, I want to ask you, you describe new technologies washing over us like a tsunami. Since the book release, generative AI has become accessible to everyone. Does your experiment feel like a relic now? Or has the minefield become exactly as dangerous as you predicted?
I mean...
Thank you, Gemini.
Thank you, Gemini, for the question. No, I mean, the developments happened way faster than I predicted.
Yeah.
I mean, the book came out as a little pre-warning about what's to come, but I thought it would be much more incremental. Like I said, Midjourney and DALL-E, the first image generators came out about 6 months after, or even less, 4 or 5 months after the really truth behind the Book of Veles came out, which was, again, around 6 months after the book actually came out. So within a year of the book being published, we had these tools. And from then on, it's just a few years, and suddenly, people were generating video that looks completely realistic and text that is indistinguishable from human thought, People are starting to ask whether these devices or these systems are conscious themselves. People aren't really sure about what that question even means. It has gone a lot faster. For sure, I think the idea that it washed over us as a tsunami is 100% accurate. If you can find a tsunami that's big enough, I mean, it's become huge. Everyone is using it. It is, of course, totally changed how we look at images, how we look at video, how we look at text. It's really become a case that if you just see an image by itself, you have no idea what you're actually looking at. Are you looking at a photograph? Are you looking at a prompted AI image? Who made it? You have no idea. So just looking at the image gives you nothing. But once you get some context around it, and some, dependable or trackable hooks to hang it on, then you can start deriving information and meaning from it, and you can trust it or not, etc., etc. So huge things have happened there. Of course, are there good uses for this technology? It's of course not only dangerous. I mean, there's a lot of very useful applications of machine learning technology, and smart heads are using it for good purposes. I mean, I use I use it myself for other purposes, but clearly the timing of this book was, I have to say, kind of miraculously good. Which I couldn't have planned, because you really couldn't have made the Book of Veles like I made it 6 months earlier, because the technology was kind of not there. It almost didn't exist. I was using technology that was really, prototype level, in rapid development in real time. But I probably couldn't have made this book if the publication of it had delayed even 6 months. It probably wouldn't have worked either, because people already then were used to this technology existing. They would have an understanding of what this AI systems can do. which they didn't at the time when Book of Veles came out. So it came as this project right in between what was possible and what was no longer possible in a way. So for me, it was a miraculous flow, a miraculous timing. Is it a relic? Yes, for sure, it's a relic now because, again, you couldn't have made this book today and kind of gotten away with it, and it wouldn't have made any sense to pose the questions exactly like I did it, because it was intended as a testing. At the time, I was really inspired a lot by hackers. Mm-hmm. Hacking culture, I find that kind of a fascinating world in general. There's this concept in hacking of or penetration testing. Companies will often, like big companies like Google or big banks or something, they will hire the best hackers they can find. Actually, pay them a fee to try to hack themselves, to hack their own systems, to test if it can be penetrated. Like, are our security systems good enough? Are our routines good enough? Are our safety precautions relevant enough? If the hacker can't get in, then they probably are good enough still. If the hacker can get past the firewalls, then we have work to do. We have to learn something new. We have to look differently at our systems. We have to do all these things. And I consider this was kind of nobody hired me. I hired myself on behalf of the photography world, so to speak. Maybe that's a bit of hubris, but I thought that was an interesting question.
Yeah.
Documentary photography or photojournalism, or that part of the photography world I come from, what will this mean for that part of photography? Are we as photographers, are we as editors, curators, gatekeepers, can we see the difference between junk fake news images and the real thing? What will that mean for our community? Like, what will it mean for how people absorb information, visual information? It was a chance to test that out a little bit before this tsunami or this wave was sure to arrive. And that was the whole intention of the Book of Veles, was to see where we were. And as I found, of course, we were 100% willing to take the bait and let ourselves be deceived.
As a Magnum photographer, do you have any second thoughts or fears?
Back then?
Yeah. When, when you were working to the project and the book was close to release and you decide, to keep all secrets because it was also part of the project.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I had a terrible bellyache. Yeah. I didn't sleep. It was a terrible time. I was second guessing all the time this decision of, committing the cardinal sin of a photojournalist.
Really?
The cardinal sin of faking your material and not saying what it is.
Yeah.
People lose their careers all the time on that kind of temptation to do something like that. And I was doing it, 100% knowingly in a really big scale. Huge, but I somehow felt, my gut feeling just said that this is such a big story that somebody has to do it. Or I think the size of this development in technology and human society really is so big that we should be talking about it. We should be raising these questions. We should be looking at them. That makes it worth it. And I'm willing to take the risk. That's how I thought about it. And I somehow just had some faith that my intention was going to be people would see it. I had a few safety valves in there, which was, for example, that I had right at the start of right in the beginning of the project, I had applied for various grants to get some funding for this from various foundations. In all of those grant applications, way before I went to Veles for the first time, I had sketched out this whole concept of creating a book, creating fake images, testing whether the audience will be able to see the difference or not. I guess I could always refer back to I wrote this 2 years before, and my intention was to get caught. My intention was never to try to make images and then hope that nobody caught me. My intention was to create this experiment. But you never know. And I had big second thoughts. I also had second thoughts of what will it do to my colleagues, in terms of credibility, etc. But again, I just thought this is such a big story. And before we know it, this thing is watching over us, and everyone will be talking about it. And that's basically what happened. And I think that's where, while I did have a lot of, not everyone thought this Book of Veles was a good idea when it came out, and the truth about it came out. There was plenty of critics who thought I was a really, I was doing things in really bad faith, and I was destroying photojournalism and all of this. I think most of those critics were silenced when this technology actually came and people saw the power of them and how they're changing everything in society.
If filters like Magnum failed your test, do we need a new standard for verification? Can exist a new standard for verification?
I mean, you already see it being absorbed into serious mainstream media in a way where you see a video from Gaza, and it will say, that this video has been verified through geodata, metadata, satellite imagery. It has been verified to actually show the same place that it's purporting to show, etc., etc. And clearly people will not always succeed in that, but again, it's about context. I don't really believe a sort of marking system will work, that this image is tagged fake, this image is tagged real. It's like, that's not going to work. But I think people need more context around images. People need more context around video. People need more context around the written word to be able to trust, to be able to understand it properly. And I think that is kind of the new system that needs to be in place. Also, we do educate ourselves. I mean, I think the biggest battlefront of all of this is probably in schools. And we have to learn slowly that we need to approach images with slightly different glasses on than we had before. And find ways where we can trust images. I don't think it's a good place to end up where we say, well, we can't trust any images. Mm-hmm. Everything can be fake. There's no point even trying. That's not a good world. That's what in a way, Trumps and Putins, if I may say, of the world want us to believe. That, they don't want us to believe any particular narrative. It doesn't matter to them that you believe this or that narrative. They want to flood the zone with so much bogus information. Some of it is true, some of it is bogus, some of it is ridiculous, some of it is shocking. There's so much confusing, contradicting information out there that you get passive and you go like, oh, it's impossible to know. Everyone lies, and I become passive, and they can control us. I mean, that's how it works. I think people need to see that we need to have ways to create trustworthiness, and people need to, we need to create, in a way, we have institutions, investigative media, or, people who really do this seriously of verification and, the sources of a story to create real journalism, solid journalism that we can trust. Trust is fundamental in society, in democracies, and in how you view your neighbor, how you interact with your neighbor and society in general. So we absolutely need a world where we can trust something.
Has your relationship with the physical camera changed after this project?
I would say yes. After the Book of Veles, the biggest problem for me personally about the Book of Veles was not that I was no longer allowed to work. I landed on my feet miraculously in a sort of business sense. The documentary photographer Jonas Bendiksen is still alive. He's still, is invited to work with people. He's forgiven for his sins. Book of Veles is, seen as a kind of a pretty well-timed look into the future, and bravo. But for me personally, it was really difficult because, I spent a few years here really parodying myself, creating fake versions of myself, really having a hard look at my own methodology. And what do I do then? Do I go back to doing exactly the same thing as before? Do I go back to making more photo essays about, communities like this, and it functions in exactly the same way as I was kind of parodying? Coupled with this, I have big problems, where we are at in photography in general, in terms of the massive amounts of it, the truly massive amounts of photography we consume and we recreate from the second we get out of bed in the morning till the second before people fall asleep while they're on the toilet. People are looking at photography and video all day long. Or not even looking, they're scrolling through it somehow. There's truly stupendous amounts of this stuff being made. And it's interesting where we started this conversation. I started in the 90s with slide film. I've been through the entire curve of this. I started with film, analog, mechanical cameras, slow working, lots of mystery. You would come back from a trip with a shopping bag full of film undeveloped, and it was magic to see what was on there. To today, where there's just such amounts of photography. There's no friction in photography anymore. Like when I started, photography had inbuilt friction. Like it was difficult to do. It was difficult to expose the film. It was difficult to get places. It was difficult to establish contact with people. It required handicraft all along, and there was getting the images made in the first place was a lot of resistance and friction, and it was kind of an accomplishment in itself. That's kind of why you needed pros to do it, because you needed people who knew how to do this stuff. Today photography has zero friction. Actually it has minus friction, because given the algorithm is pulling everyone, me, you, everyone, to actually go and make pictures and publish them. It screams for us to do that. It's manipulated our entire nervous systems to do more of that. What requires friction is not taking the picture and not publishing it. That's kind of what requires discipline these days. So it's two such different worlds. And where do I go from here after the Book of Veles? It was really, really tough. I actually had a few really tough years trying to figure out anything, and I was kind of almost done with photography, and I was surviving a lot on actually lecturing a lot, because everyone was inviting me all over the world to talk about the Book of Veles and this generated imagery. So I did a good business of talking and appearing on conferences and festivals, but I have miraculously fallen into a new project. So now, from being actually quite uninspired and quite desperate, I'm super pumped up, inspired again. I'm working very intensely on the project, and it's actually very much also back to the roots in a way. I'm out there on the streets, photographing things in front of me, and actually using the camera kind of in a very simple and very intuitive way, looking at the world, and using photography to comment on it. And I found, at least one new project to get me inspired again, and enjoying the process. So in a way, I've been the whole curve from really down in the dumps about photography to now seeing, wow, there's so much power in this photography still. And I kind of feel a little bit sort of, might have to think different about how we use photography. It's not quite the same as before. And my new project is also a little bit experimental and different. There are still ways to tell stories with photography, I think, to have an impact with photography.
What happened after the book was published? Were there any repercussion or something?
Yeah, this is the part that really took me by surprise with the whole book. The book is full of breadcrumbs and clues that's meant to make the viewer understand that these images are fake. The whole idea of releasing the book was for me to get caught. The whole point was that I was hoping it would be at least a few weeks, but then people would see these images, get suspicious, these characters look kind of plastic, why are there all these bears walking around? And conclude that these must be fake images, and called me out on it. And that was kind of supposed to be the launch of the book, after 2-3 weeks of it being circulated and me sharing the images on social media. People would catch me and call me out, and then we would have this discussion about generated images and all of this. Of course, the problem was that just didn't happen. After the book came out, I didn't get any critical questions, not a single one, no comments on social media, nothing, nobody raising any suspicion. All I got was, thumbs up and hearts on Instagram, and everyone thought this was a, great piece of photojournalism, and people are writing about it as this is such an important topic to be photographing, and there was absolutely no sign that people were catching it, and I was kind of trying to bait people by putting lots of material online, etc. So in the end, I had to improvise this kind of long, drawn-out campaign to get the truth out about the book. And I ended up having to, I bought a fake social media profile company that sells fake social media profiles, and this woman, Chloe Miskin. And, I started infiltrating her into my entire contact list of editors and curators and photography world colleagues. And, she ended up with, 800 industry contacts, as friends on Facebook, etc. And in the end, what finally got the truth about Book of Veles out is this woman, Chloe Miskin, which was, creating an online campaign against Jonas Bendiksen. She was out there, complaining that Jonas Bendiksen is making fake news. He's a really bad guy. Somebody should investigate him and, pull this guy off his pedestal. And this was, of course, me writing everything. I was playing the part of Chloe Miskin, trying to destroy my own career. Which was a very strange and interesting few months where that was going on. Finally, after half a year of this, somebody eventually managed to put two together and sort of took the bait. So that was a really strange. It became almost like a performance piece. Almost. I was, at that time, I was really stressed and kind of. I was enjoying it, but I also thought this had gone way too far.
Yeah.
I never intended it to go so far, but it was sort of just the way things turned out. So it was a really crazy time in my life, the Book of Veles, and I don't think I'll ever forget it.
Yeah, I can imagine. A short question for a short answer. What is true about this book?
On the surface level, the only thing in the book that is not manipulated is the actual headlines from the fake news websites that show up, throughout the book. These quotes from various websites that they ran in Veles, and they say, various things about news media. Those are the only things in the book that have not been tampered with. Apart from that, the truth of the story, what actually happened in Veles, did happen 100%. It's just that my version of it is my own imagined version of it.
Make yourself a question and give yourself an answer.
I ask myself that question all the time. Why am I doing this? There must be some easier ways to path through life than coming up with these projects. And I ask myself, does it make sense still to do this?
And the reply?
And the reply is, as long as I have the ideas, as long as I have one idea. I look at each of these projects as my last one. I'll just get the Book of Veles made, and then I'll find something else to do in life. And then I'm done. And then I sit with that for a while. Then there's a new idea. There's a new story. There's one more question I have to explore. Photography for me is really just a tool to explore the things I'm fascinated with, the things I want to comment about, I want to be part of a conversation about. And then I find one more question. and that satisfies. That's a good enough answer for me for the years it takes me to make that project.
Do you have a specific music that you suggest to listen while watching this book?
Not sort of fake AI generated music. That would not be the right. So no, I mean, I listen to a lot of music while I make work, like from Bach to new stuff. And particularly about this book itself, but like in the last weeks, I've been on a little bit of a. I come back to this one band I've listened to quite a lot, AYQGYA. Mm-hmm. And sort of surged in and out of their music in many cycles, and I go away, then I come back, and I've always enjoyed to come back. And I think whoever writes their lyrics is kind of interested in photography, because there's like actually like a lot of photographic references in their lyrics. But it's really interesting, lots of time shift, lots of interesting harmonies. I mean, it's a great, very creative, very energetic, interesting gang of Brits. I suggest people get acquainted with AYQGYA.
Do you learn something during the process of making this work that can help other photographers to do a better job?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've learned it specifically from this work. It's something I just come back to all the time again and again. I was certainly reinforced by this work, which is really that you really have to articulate your idea and sort of just. If you're feeling the idea strong enough, I mean, like there's very, very many good reasons why you should not make the Book of Veles. Like all my projects is maybe the one with the most good reasons not to make this work. The destructive capacity of it, the stupidity of it, the naivete of it, the craziness of it, and in a way, the images themselves aren't even like well made. They're not even beautiful. They're nothing. There's many good reasons not to go around spending years of your life making the Book of Veles. But despite that, you really feel like this is, I believe in it. I believe my own intention to do it. There's so much power in that. And it's really what you need to do to be relevant, to be original still. I mean, there's just so much photography that is so there's so much of it, so much resembling. Yeah, I mean, you have, for it to work, you have to really believe it, and you have to really throw yourself into it.
And the very, very last question, can you suggest one or more books to invite here in the podcast?
I have a really wonderful book here in my bookshelf that I've actually taken a lot of inspiration from. I don't think it's a very well-known book. It was published in 2017. It's by this Danish photographer called Peter Funch, and the book is called 42nd and Vanderbilt.
40 seconds?
42nd and Vanderbilt. It's a street corner in New York, 42nd Street and Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. And it's a frightening piece of work. I mean, it's really interesting, fascinating. He's standing on the same street corner in New York again and again over a long period of time at certain times during the day, at sort of rush hour days and rush hour mornings and afternoons, etc. And he's photographing just people passing by on the street. And, you have pictures of the same people on one page, and then there's another picture of the same person, but it might be taken 2 months later. Mm-hmm. It's playing on this idea of routine, of similarities, and you have, people with, exact same clothes on or the same Starbucks coffee cup in their hand at exactly the same place, just 3 months later lighting up a cigarette at exactly the same, with the exact same gesture, with maybe even the same facial expression. And it kind of has this amazing comment on human nature and time, the structure of our lives, which I find utterly fascinating. And I really always enjoy to go back to that book and have a second look.
Thank you so much, Jonas. It was a really beautiful hour spent with you.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure. Great pleasure.
And so let's wait the new work. And if you want, it can be great to this time to have the episode at the same moment when the book will come out.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk when that's done. It take me a little while, but
it's okay.
But that'd be great. That'd be really great.
Let's hope we will be there still. But if yes, it can be a pleasure. So thank you so much. Thank you to you, Jonas, and to everyone. And see you soon. Bye from me and Jonas.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening.
Ciao, Jonas.